Hello, this is Hayden Gibby, and I am going to be presenting presentation 4, which was kind of it's similar to other cases and picking a case and deciding to go on to it. So this is a whistleblower case entitled He Fought Halliburton and Won. And so we'll be kind of going over some of the ethical issues that we're dealing with in this presentation, as well as some other stories with the other characters within this case. Real quick before we jump into the case, let me just summarize it real quick. There's a man named Tony Menendez. He is a certified fraud examiner, and he works at the company Halliburton. Now, he begins to notice that the company is accounting for sales improperly. The standard is that revenue is received when the goods are delivered. This is known as a bill and hold, and there was an issue with this. With Halliburton, they would bill the customers and immediately recognize the revenue. Sometimes this revenue shouldn't have been recognized for months or even years before those goods were delivered. This gives the company a huge materiality issue with their finances. And if this was an issue that they would have moved forward with, they would have had to redact 6 years worth of financials. This offsets their liabilities and lowers income, which can affect earnings per share, huge trickle-down effects. Mendez felt he had to do something, so he reached out to his direct supervisor, Mark McCollum, who was the chief accounting officer at the issue. Initially, McCollum, he agreed with the issues, but later he backtracked and said the issues were warranted and that the SEC would not come after them. So he blew the whistle and immediately became ostracized, ghosted by everyone in the office. Eventually, he left the company, but time and time again, his requests and whistleblow deniers, they just kept getting denied. The SEC wouldn't formally investigate them, and finally, after 9 years, his constant appeals were sustained, and he won the case. But not the original case. His final order that stuck it to Halliburton was their treatment of how a whistleblower should be treated in the issue of the company. Now let's dive into this case and see how well he followed the IMA statement of ethical professional practices that were mentioned for this assignment. The Institute of Management Accountants, otherwise known as IMA, has a set of standards that a member should follow when faced with an ethical dilemma. The first is to use proper company protocols. The second is to discuss the issue with your immediate supervisor. The third is to reach out to an IMA anonymous hotline to offer guidance. 4, obtain legal advice and counsel on the risks of moving forward with whistleblowing. And 5, if all else fails, disengage from the company. I'm going to go over each of these briefly with Menendez and how he properly handled himself with this issue with Halliburton. 1, discuss this with your immediate supervisor. First off, there were proper channels. I will say that before we jump into that issue, but the company did not listen to him or uphold that proper channel. So he went to his supervisor, Mark McCollum. He failed to do it. He failed to properly, while he agreed, he then decided not to follow it because all the executives were on board that this was okay. While it was an illegal practice, they clearly disregarded the SEC's rule. So the next one, anonymous hotline to offer guidance. I don't know if he knew about this. I don't know if it existed back in 2005, but certainly would have helped to make the decisions he would have needed, but it's hard to say he would have done this. 6, obtain legal advice or counsel. I totally think he should have done this earlier. He should have had an ironclad defense. He should have known his rights as a whistleblower before it happened. But honestly, given the circumstances of the time and the businesses as a whole, he put his full faith and confidence with the SEC, and they failed him miserably. This was at a time when Enron and WorldCom were all going down and all these changes were happening in the industry, and he had the confidence that the SEC would uphold his actions, and they didn't. And lastly, disassociate from Halliburton. He did this eventually, but I think he should have done this sooner. When the moment he blew the whistle, the email was sent out to basically the whole firm, the whole accounting firm, that said the SEC is investigating claims filed against Mr. Menendez, which is a blatant strike at the man, right at him. And so unfortunate that happened, but he should have disassociated and done another whistleblow through that way. What are my thoughts on this? To be blunt, I think for Menendez, this was more about sending a message than about getting compensated. Bottom line, like as an accountant, you look at the numbers, you see, wow, he got 30K. I mean, granted, there's more than 1K that he originally asked for, but that is certainly not enough to be compensated for time and resources. But really, he shored up an important precedence that has boosted public confidence with whistleblowing. Clean as that. I think it's important that companies and employees within those companies feel safe and that companies can learn from these, can move on. I think the most it is just fines and reputation there at the line. But on the flip side, I see a moral compass within this individual that has to be satisfied. He could just not let it go that the SEC, the entity wholly charged with executing the rules and laws faithfully, disregarding his entire case. Really, they just flipped it back to Halliburton and said, hey, hire some people outside your firm, figure this out. Firm came back with the same thing. Were they paid off? I don't know. But for Mr. Menendez, he could not get it past him that the company or the government entity would just disregard it. And we don't know what the circumstances were. I'm sure there were bigger fish to fry at the time. And they just decided not to go with it. And so, but with that, I think he did well. He set an example of what a silent leader is by pushing and prodding and eventually just taking things into his own hand. Anyways, that was my case. I found it very interesting. And thank you for listening and enjoying my presentation. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.